listening to Good Question, a podcast for the curious by Compassion Christian Church. Welcome. My name is Blair, and this is Marcus Johnson. He's an executive pastor here at Compassion.
That's me.
I just went to your official title.
Thank you for doing that. You know, sometimes I just don't feel like you give me enough respect on the podcast.
You deserve all of the respect for being on this podcast. We know you're actually listening for the Marcus Johnson.
In reality, I hate my title.
I'm sure you do.
It feels very presumptuous, and I don't like it.
No, it's so important. Titles help bring clarity.
I really wasn't fishing for that, but that did make me feel better. Thank you.
I hope you know it is important for people to understand who they're talking to and why it's important. Okay. Speaking of, you guys, this is Good Question, a podcast that we started a year and a half ago now.
Is that right?
Yeah. Wild, right?
When are you keeping track of episodes so that we can have some form of like cake or something like that when we hit a certain number? I'm
going to say it, but I almost feel like as soon as I say it, it's going to be wrong. 27 is, I think, my official number.
Well.
Yeah.
So when's the first one we celebrate?
I don't know. What do you
28?
No, that feels so random and weird. I don't like 28.
All right. We'll figure it out.
But here at Good Question, if you're joining us for the first time in the new year, we like to address faith questions together. So these are questions sometimes submitted by you, sometimes my curiosity, sometimes Google searches that say these are what people are interested in. And the hope is that we can talk about things that we create a space that makes people feel like they can bring bold questions without judgment or fear.
Yeah.
And also just step into them, knowing that like, hey, we're not going to have all the answers. Clearly, we don't have all the answers, but we can wade into this stuff together. And it actually makes us better on the other side when we do it in community, in relationship with others. So hopefully you are finding us in some sort of community or relationship and that you go and talk to people about this, because the hope is that questions, I believe this, a reporter at my core.
Yeah.
Questions help bring truth and clarity, and they uncover some like gaps in our knowledge or like spaces in which we maybe just have felt frustration. Questions can help bring some of the like resolution, but also truthfully, I really do think they just draw us closer to real truth, and hopefully that truth is Jesus. And so that's the hope of this podcast, is that we can do that together.
Yeah.
Right?
That's great.
You're like, okay, cool.
I'm in. I was worried. I was like, man, I might be done. And then you just reconvinced me. I'm back in.
Wow. I'm
yeah.
so glad.
Yep.
So today we are wading into the question. I'm calling this episode, God, are you there?
I like that.
God, is that you? I'm trying to figure it out, Lord. I'm pretty sure that's what you're telling me, but I'm not really sure. So we're talking about listening and discerning the Lord, and just like, how do we know it? Because if you're like me, you've probably felt like, this feels right. And then you maybe felt a hint that's like, nope, that wasn't right. I heard that wrong. Or maybe you're like, this feels good. And all signs point to yes. God, is that you saying yes? Or is that just me hoping it's my will? And all of the different things that can get us caught up in some of that. So we're going to step into this conversation. So Marcus, let's just start at the very basics. Why is it important to listen specifically to the Lord? Obviously, in relationships, listening is important, but why is it important to listen to him?
Well, usually when you're asking a question about anything or looking for input, it's because you're acknowledging the fact that you don't know everything, right? And I don't mean that in like an arrogant standpoint. I mean, just that's why we ask questions about whatever. It's because we're acknowledging there's a gap in our own ability to know everything about everything. And so usually when you kind of boil it down really simply, to the reason we ever ask anybody anything is because, we're something we don't know. Well, if you then put forward, if you believe that that God exists, and that he has, like an interest in his creation, in you, then there's literally no one better you could ask, because the concept is that not only does he know everything, but he but he's good, and that ultimately he is for you in the way that like you would make the decision he'd want you to make if you could see the things he could see. right? And so like that concept, well, then
Wait
there's no one better to ask.
Say that again. Do you remember what you said?
No, okay, hold on. You'd made the decision that he'd want you to make if you could see what he could see. Yeah, if you had his perspective, if you knew what he knew, then you would do the thing that he wants you to do, right? Like you would submit to it, or submit to it's even it's kind of wrong. The concept is you would do it if you could see what he saw. So ultimately, you are submitting to him because you're trusting that he sees what you cannot see and has ultimately your good in mind, right? And so, that's why it's good to listen to him.
Listening to him can be a hard process versus just like listening as I'm listening to you, right?
Yeah.
I can engage, I can look you in the eyes, I can watch your mouse say the things that you're saying.
That's right.
I can give feedback or ask clarifying questions. That feels sometimes harder with the Lord. Like, how do I start trying this? And intentively or actively listening to the Lord?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes. So I think that when we talk about like listening for the voice of God, there's
we should probably unpack that first.
Yeah, like what is that?
Am I going to hear a voice? Is it going to be a feeling? Like, I think.
Have you ever heard a voice?
I have not.
Blair?
I have not.
Do you wish that you had?
I don't know. I don't think I'd be mad if I heard the voice of God. Like, I think I'd be like, whoa. But I definitely, like, for me, it sounds bad to say, it's a feeling. Like, I have like a gut assurance. This is it. And then I feel the assurance reinstated in circumstances around me.
Yeah, I think that, most of the time when people talk about like hearing from God, they're not often talking about an audible voice. They are talking about more of an impression of an answer, a sense of an answer. In a way, it's more intimate than just hearing a voice, right? Like when we say it, there's a version of going like, well, it would be way easier if it was just a voice. But another way, there are aspects of it that feel closer, more intimate, more. Honestly, there's a sense of being like more comforting if there's an aspect of going like, okay, but what I am being communicated to in a way that no one else can. Which so there's kind of like there's just a different perspective you can have on it. But yeah, there's like a sense of hearing from God, and there are different ways of doing that. There's this concept. There's the most obvious one would be a version of prayer that you're asking out a question and then hoping to have that sense of an answer like in your mind or your heart, like in the moment. But there's lots of ways to receive, an answer from God that isn't just in prayer and then listening for one. There's listening to or seeking counsel of other people who are followers of Jesus in particular. But the big one that gets, I think, overlooked in a way is there's a reason that this thing is referred to as God's word. Like, this is the main way that he has chosen to communicate to us. And so, but in a way it's almost like, okay. But like what I'm asking, like, should I wear red or should I wear blue? And that's not in here. And it's like, okay, but that doesn't mean that what is in here isn't of the greatest importance. So there's actually a version of which you could say, when we're seeking to hear from God, I actually think this is the place to start. Not only because it actually answers the most important questions, and frankly, what we're asking usually feels more important to us in the moment rather than actually being the most important questions. But that's.
That's so true. It's so true.
Yeah. But the other thing is when Jesus says
that makes me feel so egotistical.
Well, that just puts you in good company, aren't we all? Aren't we all?
I am, right?
Yeah.
Like, we all are. That's kind of the world we live in is very much so me-centric. But yeah, you're right. It is so much about what I'm praying is like something that's probably already been answered.
I think God in his kindness will often give us guidance on the things that we ask him for guidance for. But that doesn't mean that those things are actually the things that are most important to him or the most important, like, are as important as we feel like they are in the moment. There are lots of things that we face that feel like this is make or break, life affecting kind of things that in hindsight, we can all look back at things and go like, wow, I felt like this was it.
Yeah.
And it turns out
and I think
it didn't have all that great of an impact on my life at all.
I think sometimes too, like, that's the pressures of the place that we are. Because I do think, like, there have been lots of times that I specifically will go to the Lord asking for his wisdom or his guidance on a decision that I need to make.
Yeah.
I'm praying a very specific prayer.
Right.
Yes or no.
Right.
Do I move to this location or do I stay?
Right.
Do I take the job or do I not? Do
That's right.
I engage in this conversation with this person or not? Right? All of those things. And I'm asking for a clear answer from the Lord because I've been given a timeline that I got to act on. But realistically, could I go beyond the timeline, or is the timeline real? Or did I just feel that pressure because that's what, you know what I mean? Like, I think sometimes the reason these things take a precedent in our mind is we put timelines or deadlines on things. And because everything in the world, like, I have projects that are due
it's like
at a deadline.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes we create those in our own head, which creates this, like, level of importance that this has to go all the way up here when it's actually probably not up there.
Yes, that whole sense of like the door is slowly closing, and if I don't make this call and it's the right one, it'll just be shut forever.
Yes.
And there's an aspect of that that's like, okay, but actually, I don't want to dismiss it because the bottom line is
Sometimes
that we've all felt that consistently. We all understand how heavy that can feel, how much anxiety and stress can come from that, fear can come from that. And a genuine desire of wanting to do, the like right thing, like all that's real. All I mean is that in the grander scheme of things, the bigger and more fundamental and more, at least eternity shaping kinds of things are already addressed with real clarity here. And usually the things we're going like, oh, but I need to know about this job. I need to know about this person. I need to know about this choice. Like I do believe in his kindness, God gives answers to that, but that doesn't mean when we talk about hearing from God, I just don't ever want to personally dismiss or move past the fact that his word is sufficient to be able to point to the fact that our God communicates.
Yes.
That he speaks, that he does give guidance and answers. And when I'm struggling with the fact that I have a specific question and I'm asking for a specific answer to that question, I feel like God is being silent. I should not I should not receive that as God like not speaking to me. He has spoken graciously and sufficiently into my life the things that I need to know to have put my trust in Jesus, and everything else will ultimately pale in comparison, right? And so I don't know. I don't want to, Jesus juke people that are basically struggling with a choice about a job or whatever. But there's an aspect of it of going like, you definitely don't get lost into the little voice in your mind that's basically going like, God is silent, because he's not. He's not.
Man, and it's such a good reminder. He has spoken already, and that is freely available to us.
That's right.
Specifically here in this country, we don't have a lack of access to the Bible. I literally made a joke earlier today, Colby, who's in the backside of this. I was like, wow, we got Bibles all over the place. And like legitimately, because I was like arranging Bibles, and I realized like, wow, we've got so many in this one little room.
Yeah.
Not to mention the one I've got on my phone, the one I've got on my watch. Like,
that's right.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
And how often do I actually
you have it on your phone, in your watch? You can read the Bible on your watch?
App on my watch, yeah.
Wow, that's
verses
cool.
To myself as a reminder that, like, hey,
that's cool.
Look up,
yeah,
okay. But it is one of those things, right? That we often it's accessible.
Yes.
It's accessible, and we don't choose it, or I think it doesn't. I can, in my humanness, think I get it, but that doesn't speak to this specifically.
Yep.
Instead of like, No, study it, get in it, and ask the Lord to bring clarity to what he means in this for you.
John 10, I think, and nobody double check this. Let's just all think it's John 10. This is Jesus. He gives this illustration where he refers to himself as the good shepherd, and one of the things he talks about is.
Wait, I'm studying this literally right now. I'm pretty sure it is. Is it John 11?
Oh man, did you just?
I don't have mine.
I have. Don't worry. I brought a Bible. John 10, which we'll call it that until we verify. The thing he says is that he says, "My sheep will know my voice."
Yep.
And the thing that
Man, I studied this for a long time, Marcus. The Lord is doing something. 10. You were right. 10.
Hey, John 11's pretty good too, though.
John 11 is this week. John 10 was
That's
last
Lazarus.
week.
John 11 is Lazarus. I only know because it's the shortest verse of the Bible. Jesus wept. 11:35. Don't double check. Okay. It might be 33. Don't worry about it.
You were right on the 10. I trust
okay. So that whole like they'll know my voice. Yeah. Well, like when I have counseled people on how to hear from God, one of the things that I point to is like this is his voice, and the more you know his word, the more likely you are to be able to recognize his voice when it shows up outside of his word. Because like, this is the most consistent way that you can go in and be sure that you're hearing from the Lord. And then when you hear his voice, otherwise, like this will get you to that point of my sheep will know my voice. And then when you hear the voice of the Lord, whether it's coming through the mouth of other people and their advice they're giving you, whether it's that sense of impression and answered prayer or whatever, you are more likely to recognize it based off of being in his word.
Well, and if we know his word, we know his character, and we know who he reveals himself to be in situations. And so we can run that against like, okay, is this God's character? Is this who he has proven himself to be in scripture? And who he's proving himself to be to me. Okay, so we've talked about scripture. That's obviously a wonderful way. Prayer. Counsel, we talked about hearing it from those around us.
Sure.
Let's talk specifically. If I am like ready in 2024, this is going to be my year. I'm going to be really intentional about listening to the Lord. What are some good things? Like, how can we avoid the frustration of feeling like I didn't hear him, he's silent? How can we avoid that feeling and also just like listen more specifically? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Pitfalls. How can we wait in expectation or avoid the error of saying, I didn't hear it?
So one of my favorite things, I think this applies. One of my favorite things that I've heard recently and been trying to put into practice is my own personality is one where like, if I question whether or not I am receiving an answer from the Lord, I tend to like freeze. Like, I'm like, was that? And then I back away and want to be like try to check other angles or whatever. And was someone I heard talking about this said that instead one of the ways to get a sense of like being more and more and more attuned to the voice of God is that when you get a sense of I think God's telling me to do something, you do it. And then you just basically accept that whatever comes out of that. Like if you're going like, man, I really think God's telling me I should call this coworker and invite him to church, whatever. And then the coworker is like irate. How dare you? I hate you and everything about you. That you're like, well, your thing is like, okay, God, that was my love offering to you. Like I am willing to face the awkwardness, the goofiness, the being way outside of my comfort zone. And sometimes I'm going to do it and you're going to be like, blow my mind. He's going to be like, this person's going to say something along the lines of like, whoa, like, hey, I literally was just talking to someone about the fact that I wish I knew a place to go. And look at you like show up out of the blue and you're going to be like, whoa, high five, God. And then you're like, okay, you will get more attuned to the voice of God. And the other side of it is to go, okay, that wasn't God. That was a sense of Christian guilt, or that was some, I was hoping to impress somebody. I wasn't, I was thinking of getting like my Christian scout badge. I wasn't thinking of honoring Jesus. I don't know. But and then you walk away from it. You go like either way.
So kind of stepping back and observing what you just witnessed.
Yeah. And then you experience it and you go, but here's the deal. Whatever it is, God, I so want to be the kind of person that can hear your voice and respond when I hear it, that I'm willing to get it wrong sometimes so that I don't just never have it happen at all because I'm just afraid that I'm never right.
Yeah.
And at least for my personality, that's been good for me, is that when I'm like, okay.
There's a humbleness in that too, of just like, I will fall on my face for you, Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. Because I want to be the kind of person that hears you when you're speaking to me. I want to be the kind of person that you look out and you go, who's going to do this for me? Well, the first person I need to find is someone who can hear my voice when I'm speaking, who's listening, who's attuned to it.
Yep.
And then if I'm going, here I am, Lord, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, I'm in. And, sometimes it will be goofy. But if we let that goofiness be a fear that takes us from a place of questioning whether or not we're hearing from God in the first place, okay, well, just offer that goofiness to God and be like, this might go sideways. But you know what, God? I want to be this person more than I want to like avoid an awkward situation with somebody.
Man, that feels super helpful to be reminded that like, hey, I'll fail for you, Lord.
Yeah.
Which is such a, like, it should be a very elementary thing because, like, our lives are a sacrifice. Like, hopefully,
that's right.
If we've been transformed by Jesus, by his saving power and his grace, then, like, everything is already his. But it's all already his.
I think we have this mental image of, like, well, the way it's supposed to go is I'm supposed to definitely know it's the voice of God immediately.
Yes.
And then what comes out of that is like it's great and successful and the clouds part and the light hits and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
And it's one of those things of going like, look, that's just not how most people experience it most of the time. And instead what you need to do is you just need to be the person that's willing to go, I'm not going to assume that I am mature enough to always be able to distinguish the voice of God. But if I want to grow in that maturity, I have to be willing to
step into it.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Also, you guys, you're not hearing the voice or the bell of the Lord. That is construction happening in our lobby. So please excuse the beeps and the loud
God has an issue with what I'm saying right now.
There
He's
was
like
a literal honk. Okay, so as we talk about this, you just talked about this. Like, we would all love to be mature and know that we just heard the voice of God. That was surely him.
No, and that is possible. And I know people that when they tell me like, yeah, I heard from the Lord, I don't doubt it for a second.
How do we get to that place? Is it just doing the testing or the like evaluating post these moments to recognize it? Is it just becoming so familiar that was it?
I'm not sure that it's as simple as just saying like maturity happens over time.
Yeah, true.
But that's,
it takes effort. Yeah.
I know I've met people that I look at and go, I don't feel like this person is necessarily like a really mature person spiritually, but I do get the sense that they are, for whatever reason, attuned. And that's like a thing that I don't know I have a good explanation for. I don't know that I do. But I would say most of the time, two things are happening. A couple things are happening. One is a few things are happening. Yeah. Okay. So for first is they're regularly in the Word of God and they're regularly in prayer. Another thing is that they're seeking to hear the voice of the Lord is genuine. They're not like only going to pick up. They're not only going to pick up the phone when they're seeking an answer. They're open to hearing the voice of God
in the mundane.
And when it's time for him to convict you of something, not just when it's time for him to answer one of your questions. And then the last one is, and this is another illustration that I got from somebody else that I wish I was giving credit for, but it's this idea of like, if you're ever on like a pond around here or a creek or something like that, like
I love that you just said crick.
Crick, I'm with you.
People make fun of me for that.
I was making fun of you for that by saying it, actually,
that's unfortunate.
No. I was making fun of you. I was speaking your language. It was intentional. Okay, well,
that's,
walked into it a little bit there. But if you Like normally, like we're the if you throw a rock into a pond, it fires up the silt and it's all muddy and cloudy and stuff, and it just takes time for it to settle back down and get clear again. Most of us, most of the time, are the muddy version of that, and like there's a commitment to going like the vast majority of the time, what we're interacting with is just noise, constant noise. And you've got to, part of hearing from God is letting the silt settle until there's clarity again in your mind and in your heart. And like, that's the most normal. And so the people that I know that I really do think they normally hear from the Lord. They position themselves in the places of going like, I am going to sit and wait upon this, and I am going to spend time letting things settle in a way that just not all of us
do.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
Lord, I have these 20 minutes, and I need you to give me an answer right in this window of space.
And the snow globe has been shaken the whole time before this.
My phone's buzzing in the process. I've got dinner cooking in the background.
This is us, man.
Yeah,
this is us.
You're so right. The noise is real. So it is putting yourself in a position to actually hear and to be prepared for whatever may come, right?
Yeah.
I think I often can come to the Lord listening with the hope of what he's going to say.
Yeah.
And I mean, sometimes I'll just like tell him, like, Lord, this is what I'm hoping. And I don't know that that's a bad thing to have expectation, but I need to be okay if he says no to that, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't know. That's just something that I've been convicted of lately. I'm like, I feel guilty that I'm praying my will because I know I'm supposed to pray your will. But it is that feeling of like, I think the Lord, he cares about my authentic heart and what I want. And he wants to know those things too, right?
That's true. 100%. But like, and there's a different approach to, okay. So, like, am I supposed to continue to date this dude? Yep. All right. So sure, just random question that you could imagine asking the Lord, or to make it less distracting for everybody, since I'm the one speaking. Marry or date this chick. Okay, this lady, this wonderful woman made in the image of God, and like you're sitting there and you're going like, God, that's the answer I want. I want you to tell me like yes or no. Yep. And then you settle into it, and what you need to be willing to do, like sometimes you're not going to get an answer from God because you're not actually asking for him to speak into the situation. You're asking for the magic 8-ball version of like yes or no. Right. Because, sometimes, and I've gone through this before in my own life, should I continue dating this young lady? The answer was, Marcus, why are you so afraid of being alone? And it's like, oh no, see, God, that's not what I was. I was looking for the yes or the no. Yeah. I wasn't asking you to reveal like where my fear and pain and like distrust and
why are you praying this? Yeah.
And then you're like nope, shaking the 8-ball again, and it's like, no, that was the answer. The answer that God's giving you is hey, like, let's work through this. Yeah. And then what comes from that is a healthier version, a more sanctified, a more like Jesus version of yourself, which ultimately may make the right answer based off of that, or make the right decision based off of that. But it's like not the answer you're looking for. And to walk into, to step before the king and go like, yeah, but I'm looking for this is not the same thing as to step before the king and going like, I'm looking for you.
Yeah.
And I'm looking to hear from you because I trust you and I love you and I know that you love me. And so speak into this. I would like an answer to this question, but God, if you got something to say that isn't what I'm looking for, I'm still here to hear it. Right.
Yep. Yeah. Ooh, the motivation of what you're asking him. That's I had a friend challenge me on that this past week. And it was like, what is my greatest desire in this thing?
The parenting metaphor doesn't always work, but any of y'all that are out there that are parents or have babysat somebody or have nieces or nephews or whatever it might be, there are times where they will ask you a question and you can know, and sometimes in the moment you give them a version of like, 'cause I said so. And it's not always because like that's all you got. Sometimes it's because you're looking at them and you're going, they don't want an actual answer to this. They just want what they want. But there are other times when your child or your, whoever you have some authority over approaches you in a way that makes you go like, I actually think they genuinely want to understand what's happening right here. And I'll give them a real answer. And there are other times where it's like, nah, man, like you're not getting anything out of me other than like until you're ready. I'm not even going to bother trying to give you something real here. And I do think there are times where God looks at us and goes like, you are not coming with a humble spirit.
You're not ready for this.
Nobody treats me like a genie. I'm not here to, fulfill your wishes necessarily. Like I'm looking for something deeper and more profound than that. And so I do think the way we approach it can often affect it pretty dramatically.
So good. Oh man, that challenges me to think about what are the motivations for the things I'm asking to hear the Lord on? Is it because something is required of me and I just need help?
Well, we'll just work through it together, Blair. What are you asking God about right now, huh?
This is the question I have for you next.
No. Yeah, I know what question you're trying to ask me. It's weird. I just turned it around.
I want to finish on the idea of like, how do you feel the Lord speaking to you right now? Because I do think 2024, the change of the year, the calendar, makes it so people are a little bit more introspective. Is that the word? Like they look within to figure out like, okay, what happened in the past year? What do I want to take with me? I mean, there's a TikTok trend in and out, right? And so I think a lot of people are trying to evaluate, like, what do I want to do in this new year? And if we want to make listening to God a priority, sometimes we got to hear about how other people are listening or what they're hearing. And I think, again, correct me if I'm wrong here, Marcus.
I will gladly do so.
I feel like there is sometimes a rhythm in which the Lord is speaking things to us, and they can be beneficial for the rest of us. Like that he's telling me something and he might be telling you the same thing and we need to work at this together. Or like there is something happening in our culture, in our society, and we as believers, he's placed this seed in us and we all need to attack this now. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That's interesting. So what was the question?
Okay, so the question is, where do you feel the Lord is speaking to you? Or is there a place in your life right now that you're like, oh, the Lord is working on me in blank?
It's been I've been experiencing something that I appreciate God for. I feel like sometimes it's odd how the same issue can keep coming up, but we get different. It feels like there's different answers. And I think a lot of the time it's God in his kindness walking us into deeper levels about the same thing that we weren't ready for the first time it was an issue. And so I've had this aspect of my job. My job has been complicated by holding an interim position for a while, which I've loved, if anyone downtown is listening, but it's been complex because of it. There have been aspects of my job where I felt like I was like, man, I used to be good at this. I perceive myself as someone that's good at this, and I'm doing it, and I'm going like, I don't think I'm good at this anymore. And the first thing, and I brought it to God, and the first answer I felt like I got is like, hey man, your muscles are atrophied like this, like you don't need to, like you're good, get some more practice under you, you'll be fine. That's because, and so God in his kindness provided me some comfort, like, hey, don't beat yourself up. And then the next time, I felt like I got a different answer, and the next answer was a version of, basically this is a spiritual attack. You need to address this not as a strategic thing, but as a spiritual thing. Okay, so I did that, and I had some people pray with me and for me, and it helped. And then the third time I got frustrated about this and brought it back to God. This time he said, you're afraid that you're going to like this and you're going to love this, and that's going to have implications on what you're currently doing.
Oh.
And I was like, ooh. And I actually think in his kindness, what he was doing is he was meeting me at the layer that I was ready for.
Handle.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh,
And it's the same
just
thing.
love how much you've said in his kindness. Like it is. That is so true.
Yeah, he is good and gentle, and he loves us, and he knows us better than we know ourselves. And the first thing I needed was for him to just be like, hey, man, you're good.
I got you.
Yeah, you're good. Don't beat yourself up. You're good. And the next time I was like, okay, yeah, but man, it's still frustrating. He's like, hey, there's some more things about this that you're not seeing. Let me help you see it, and so that you can handle it the way that you know you ought to now that you understand it. Cool. And then the third time was like, hey, let me show you your own heart in this and how you're afraid. And because I didn't have fear anywhere in my wheelhouse as like a issue in what I was asking God about. And so he showed it to me and I went, oh. And then I confirmed that with some people I'm very close to and trust, and said, this is what I feel like I'm hearing from God. And they went, wow, that makes a lot of sense. And I was like, dang, it is God.
I was right. Oh.
I was hoping I ate a bad burrito or whatever and had myself a fever dream. I don't know. But yeah. So I think that the big thing is that
and there's also a good lesson in this too, that sometimes we have to keep praying it, right? Because the first time, if you had just walked away, you feel very like, oh, it's just, I needed to be reminded you're fine. But if you didn't keep after it, man, the Lord couldn't reveal the rest of it to you.
Yeah, I am glad to have walked now as long as I have walked with him. And I know now that often when I have a recurring thing that I'm frustrated by and that I just feel like, man, God, I just want to understand, like, what is going on? Help me see this. I have learned that he does sometimes. It's not like hey, I already answered this question.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's what happened here. It's God, am I ready to hear more from you in this? Like, this is still a thing. Is there more going on here? And the way that he peels back the layers is an act of compassion and kindness. Because the first time I heard it, if I was like frustrated by something going, God, what's going on? Like, I don't know why I'm struggling so much here. And he basically was like, it's because you're afraid. I would have been like, panic, no. That would have really messed with me. And, God would have probably helped me through it. But that wasn't the ease me through into the depths that I needed to be eased into. And so he was kind to me. Yep.
He walks with us.
Yep.
That's so good, Marcus. Thank you for sharing it. I
Sure.
know that's a big question. I'll tell you mine.
Yeah,
you
come on.
Ask, but I'll tell you it.
I did ask, but you deflected immediately is what happened. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't notice that. Okay, so I am learning a lesson of surrender. 2024 is going to be the year that I actually open my hands officially. I know I've said that 1,000 times. And to be frank, if you would have asked me last year, are your hands open? I'd be like, yes, they are.
Wide open.
Look at me. And now I'm realizing there are just so many things. I'm a control freak. I like to have all the information at my fingertips and then make a decision. And it's also why I'm bad at listening to the Lord, because I believe there's something on the other side that I just I don't have it all yet. And I need the clarity of Blair, this is the right move. Go now.
Yeah, right.
I want the GPS version of God to give me the step-by-step direction.
Sure. Yeah.
And frankly, that's just not how he's worked in my life. It's been, I need to take a step of obedience. I love the verse in Exodus 11:11. It's a reminder that okay, the water's not going to be parted until I put my foot into it sometimes. And so surrender for me is making the acts of obedience to continue to step into the mess and let him part the waters for me. Let him trust that he's going to do what he needs to do, and that if it gets messy, I'll be fine because he's got me. And so this year has come with a lot of change for my husband and I.
Yeah.
And it's been an opportunity for me to really surrender it all. It's funny that I made this commitment, and then the Lord just keeps providing opportunities for me to prove that this is actually what you're about.
It's like praying for patience.
Are you going to do this?
It's dangerous.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so he's definitely given me a lot of opportunities. And so this year I am just trying to let that be the thing that I do. And even in so many of the ways I've gotten caught up in okay, this is maybe a place he's telling me to surrender. And it wasn't until a counselor, a friend, had said to me, no, Blair, that's not what that surrender looks like in this moment. I think like I got so caught up in like, this is the word, this is what I'm doing, Blair, and this is what this looks like, that I forgot to go to the Lord and ask, what does the surrender look like in this situation?
Yeah.
What does the surrender actually require of me? And so, man, it is so interesting how God is gracious. He's full of patience and kindness. And if we take the step to be obedient and to listen, if we give him the space, I really believe he's going to show up. He has for me. And it's when I quiet the noise, as you're talking about, let the rock and the mud settle, that I can hear him. But too often I'm too caught up by the mud, and I'm asking him to get rid of the mud.
faster.
Yeah, get rid of the mud. And so, man, I hope that it's just a reminder for you guys that like, he is not a silent God. He is active and he is present. And sometimes he is speaking just by being with you in the hurt or the questioning or the decision making that you need to do. And so I hope we all take a little bit more time this year to give him the space that he has rightfully earned in our lives. And if you are trying to figure out, has he earned that space in your life? We'd love to talk to you too about that. We have a lot of people who are great at hearing the voice of the Lord and can help you maybe figure out where is the place to put your foot next. And so any final thoughts, Marcus, on listening for the Lord?
And I'm just glad that you mentioned that you spoke to a friend. I think that I mentioned that as well. I think that that's something that probably both of us have been shown through wiser people than ourselves, that like, it is good to do this in community. It's not meant to be done solo.
No.
And so, and what the great thing is there is that. It just helps build confidence.
It does.
It helps build confidence that like, oh, okay, I did hear this correctly. And all those things are really beneficial. And so
it
it's
just
good.
reminds you, you're not crazy. Like, I'm not losing it, right? Like there have been plenty of times that other people have helped me realize like, okay, Blair, you're not off base. Like, because I am my own worst critic sometimes, and it's through the kindness of the community God's placed in my company that I recognize some of that stuff. Because he uses them too.
Yeah, he does.
So good. Okay, friends, we are going to come back at you with another episode next month. In case you're new again, we drop an episode per month, and we're trying to keep them shorter.
It'll be episode 28.
Yeah, there we go. And we're not celebrating it next time, but maybe sometime after that. Thanks for being here, and we hope you'll come back for the next time that we discuss one good question with love and curiosity in our hearts. Bye, guys.
Goodbye.